Ben, for taking the time to talk to us today ahead of EduFest La Rose in 2026. It feels like it is ages away, but we're so excited to finally welcome you in June of next year.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really excited about this opportunity and look forward to presenting to all of your attendees.
The purpose of the Meet the Speaker series is that a lot of times when you go to a conference or when you go to a presentation, you can get quite in depth in the topic, but I often found myself thinking, what about the individual? What do they do when they're not thinking about this subject? What do they do to wind down? Or on the contrary, what's their morning routine like? How do they get their day started, right? And so I thought it may be nice to start first by introducing yourself. If you tell us your name, who you are, what your job title is, and what that entails.
Yeah, so my name is Ben Aldridge. I'm a writer and speaker, and I focus on resilience, practical philosophy, and mental health. And these two types of work are very contrasting. So when you write, it's very much an introverted experience. You're trying to communicate a message through words. Whereas when you go out and you speak to audiences, it's a bit more extroverted. You're connecting to audiences through your speech, and it's a very different experience. It's a yin yang, really, in the way that it works and the balance of these two crafts. But it's ultimately trying to convey the message, and that message is sharing ideas that profoundly changed my life.
Was this always something that you knew since you were little that you wanted to do? Was it something that you kind of figure out along the way? How does that happen? Is it, I guess a different way to phrase it is this something that happened to you or is this something that you made happen?
I think all of this came off the back of a really difficult experience in my life when, in my mid 20s, I started experiencing severe and debilitating anxiety. I began having these back to back panic attacks. And ultimately, to cut a long story short, I discovered philosophy, Stoicism in particular, and it helped me so much. It pulled me out of a very dark mental space. And because of that, it changed everything for me. It changed the trajectory of my life. And I wanted to share some of these ideas because I could see how powerful it was firsthand and really wanted to be able to share that message with other people because I think it can make a huge difference, especially some of these philosophical ideas that are very practical. These are the things that can make a difference. So I ultimately want to do that, want to share that with as many people as possible.
So EduFest attendees can expect to hear about Stoicism, can expect to hear about mental well-being, topics that you've raised. What would you say to someone that feels like these, because they are tied to philosophical ideas, that these require a kind of philosophical background in order to be able to understand, or already a kind of someone that's really skeptical about saying, well, this isn't for me because I'm not such and such and such. What would you say to someone that has that train of thought when looking through the speakers list and thinking, am I going to go to this session or that session?
Yeah, so the philosophy that I focus on is the practical philosophy, things that you can do instantly. You don't need a background in philosophy to do this. My background isn't philosophy. I just have been using these ideas and have seen how transformative they've been. So I think anyone can use this at any stage in their life. And that's the power of it. The power of philosophy is actually using it, not just sitting there debating. I know that there's a time and a place for that, but this is really a call to action, really, with ideas and how we can use them in a tangible way in our lives to actually improve what we're experiencing.
I personally think that Stoicism gets a bit of a bad rep as a kind of a very depressing mindset in just kind of, well, things come and go. We're going to die anyway. Just kind of take it and accept it. Have you found that people react that way when you talk about Stoicism? Is that an impression that a lot of people have? Or do you think, on the contrary, a lot of people don't really know much about it and therefore you're able to explain it in better terms?
Yeah, so there's a lot of misinterpretation of Stoicism and Stoic ideas. And I think it's a rich philosophy. It's very big. There's lots of ideas within it, and there's diversity of thought within that space. So I feel that there are many ideas that are instantly applicable to life. And the fact that a lot of Stoic ideas are the foundation for many modern therapies like cognitive behavior therapy and REBT, rational emotive behavior therapy, shows how useful and practical they are. So I think when people start to see the connection and how useful these ideas can be, that's when it comes to life, and maybe the misunderstandings about the philosophy start to go away, and they can see, okay, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of common sense is based around Stoic ideas. So it's just incredibly practical. And I think people will be surprised by some of the ideas that the Stoics use, and they were quite inventive and quite quirky as well. So there's a lot of history that's very interesting, and the way that they live their lives. And my work does focus on Stoicism, but there's other philosophy as well that kind of bleeds into it. I mean, Stoicism saved me, so that's really the heavy emphasis and the main thing that I focus on. But there are lots of other philosophies that have helped me, so they all kind of come together in my work.
If someone is watching this and goes, you know what, I've always been curious, I've always been intrigued, but I've never really taken the time to read about it or delve into it, and maybe they want to do this before EduFest in June 2026, is there a book that you wish everyone would read and that maybe would open their eyes to some of these ideas and philosophies?
Yes, well, there's many books that I would recommend. It's hard to kind of pinpoint one. I think if you're interested in the Stoicism point of view, Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is a great book because it's very short, it's easy to get into, snippets of philosophy, and it highlights the practicality of Stoicism. But there are other ideas that I love, and books that I think would be really, really helpful in advance of my talk. There's a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers, and it talks about transforming fear. And that's very much a big theme of my work, talking about building resilience by stepping outside your comfort zone and doing difficult, challenging, and scary things. And it can be quite adventurous as well. So Susan Jeffers' work, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, is very much in alignment with what I talk about as well. So those two books I think would be a great place to start.
And we're not thinking about stoicism and resilience and mental well-being. What do you do to just be Ben? What do you do? Or is it so intertwined with who you are because of your personal story that even when you're having quote unquote downtime, me time, you still find yourself gravitating back towards the same topics and the same kind of reading and the same kind of research?
Yeah, so I guess the underlying theme in my life is curiosity. I'm very curious as a person, so I read very broadly and love to just explore lots of different subjects and lots of different ideas. So sometimes I will get pigeonholed as just talking about Stoicism, but this is kind of the idea that saved me. But there are many other ideas and things that I connect to. So it's very broad, but curiosity is the thing that drives me. So you'll always find me exploring something new, something different, learning a new skill, going out there, trying different things, and just understanding myself better. I found that doing different things, learning, is a great way of being able to understand the architecture of your mind, the way that you think about things. When you try something new, you have that beginner's mindset, and there's often frustrations and setbacks along the way, and that can teach you a lot about yourself. So I'm always driven by curiosity, and I'll end up doing lots of different things like learning to pick locks, and learning to juggle, learning to fold origami, solve Rubik's cubes, that kind of stuff. Or you'll find me outdoors. I love being out in nature and climbing and doing a whole host of active things out in nature. So there's a real mix, but curiosity is the driving force behind so much in my life.
What would you say to someone that thinks that learning is finite? I mean, I think we're both in agreement that it isn't the case, but I do think that, especially within an education landscape, seen from the outside, there tends to be a kind of idea that you graduate high school, you get a bachelor's, you get a master's, potentially you do a PhD. And so there's a lot of ideas associated with that type of learning. But
Mm.
listening to you just now, resonates with my idea of lifelong learning and that curiosity that learning doesn't need to happen in a classroom, doesn't need to happen via degree. It can just be yourself actually looking for those opportunities and going out there and finding those different ways in which you can learn. What would you say to someone that says to you that they believe that there's a time constraint on learning, that it's something you do from X age to X age, and then after that it's done? How do you get them to think otherwise?
Well, I think this comes from the traditional academic background of separating subjects. You know, we study a subject, but actually, in reality, subjects bleed into other subjects. Art, architecture, mathematics, science, philosophy, they all blend into each other at different stages. So I think there is ultimately never a point where we will know everything, and we learn a new subject and it can help us to understand other subjects as well. So there's no limit to that. And I think if you're capping the way that you view your learning, you're going to be limiting yourself, because you never know what can cause a breakthrough in your thinking or in your particular field. If you're studying a subject that you've taken to quite an advanced level, you never know what little skill or little hack or little concept that you come across from a different subject that might break through years of frustration. You don't know where it's going to come from, that ping of insight. So I think just being open is incredibly powerful. And life is very dynamic and we're always changing. The world around us is changing faster than ever. So having the mindset to be open to change and open to ideas and learning will help us. It helps us to thrive, irrespective of what's going on around us. And change is one of the inevitable things that we all have to face. So I think trying to have a fixed mindset about education can limit us. So, be open and look at all these different subjects, because they do cross over as well.
Yeah, and I think for me at least, that crossing over of the subjects is where creativity fundamentally resides, right? And an uncreative life, I think, is an unfulfilled life to some extent, because we do have the incredible ability to actually come up with different ideas, to put those two things together and come up with something slightly different or even something new, if we're really lucky. So I couldn't agree more with what you just said. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our EduFest attendees ahead of EduFest 2026?
I think the key thing that I will be talking about is this idea called ascesis, which back in ancient Greece was a concept where the Stoics, the Cynics, etc., they would push themselves out of their comfort zones to build resilience. So this is one of the things that I'm going to be focusing on, how we can step outside our comfort zone, inspired by the ancient Greeks, to build a more resilient mindset. And this is a very fun and practical concept. So this workshop and this talk that I'm going to be delivering will show people how to connect to this in a very tangible way in the modern world. So it should be a lot of fun. It's a bit silly at times, but I think that's a good thing, because we can take ourselves too seriously. And actually there is power in being able to embrace that side of us that's a little bit quirky. So it will be a mix of ideas, but they're very powerful and transformative ideas I've seen in my life. It's changed my life, and I've seen how it can change other people's lives. So I look forward to sharing some of these in detail with everyone at EduFest.